guys!
Hey.
Today we're going to be making a scrunchie with a bow.
Love it. This is one of my favorite projects. Now, if you saw my earlier video, we made just a basic scrunchie, the simplest version, but why not add a bow, right? So, the Scrunchie Construction is going to be the same as what we did with the cherry video, but we are going to just show you the whole thing from scratch. So, what you're going to need is one piece of fabric that is 4 inches wide by 18 inches long, and then we're going to have 2 bow accent pieces. So if you got a kit from me and we had the bow, a bow scrunchie kit from me, then that fabric will all be included. So we have 2 pieces for the bow. This is approximately 10 inches long and 2.5 inches wide, and then we do have an angled edge on all the pieces. So that's the fabric, and then you will also have elastic. The elastic is 7.5 inches long. Now, we cut this a little bit shorter because Braylon prefers to have her elastic at 7 inches. So this particular piece is 7 inches, but the pieces of elastic in your kit are 7.5. So there you go. And then we will have a safety pin. So those are the items in your kit, and we can get started. Okay, so we're going to get started first with the long piece of fabric. Now typically at this point you're going to identify the right and the wrong side. This fabric is kind of funny. It's kind of a really lightweight chambray. It's really hard to identify the right and the wrong side. I think that this particular side right here is going to be our right side, but in the earlier video with the cherries, it's easier to notice. So if this part confuses you at all, feel free to watch that earlier video. Now what we're going to be doing is we're going to be looking at the fabric, and this is the wrong side, okay? So the side that I am looking at is the wrong side, and I'm going to fold over the top edge. So at this point, I am looking at the wrong side, and I have just about 1 inch of the right side showing because I folded over that top edge, okay? And now I'm going to take this piece and fold it together. We're going to fold it hot dog style. I always get that mixed up, but hot dog style. So at this point, the folded edge is going to be on the outside. You'll see that edge right there. And we're going to go ahead and just clip all the way down the side. So I'm going to let Braylon take over and do that. So she'll clip along the sides. Now this fabric has a stripe pattern, so if you know me, you know that I love to match up those stripes just because it's fun. So she'll go ahead and clip that. Perfect. All right, so I mention this all the time, but we use sewing clips instead of pins whenever we possibly can because I prefer them and they hurt less when you step on them. But if you don't have sewing clips, you can always use pins. But like I said, she just went ahead and she clipped the 2 raw edges together. So this opposite side is a folded edge. You do not need to clip that because it's already attached. We are just going to sew straight down the edge with the clips. So let's go to the machine. Okay, so we are at the machine. We have the machine at 0-1 already, which is our straight stitch. I do have a piece of painter's tape lined up already at our 1/2 inch seam allowance. So we are going to sew this at a 1/2 inch seam allowance. I'm going to take this magnet and just line it up. Magnets are strong. Line it up with the painter's tape just to make that seam allowance edge a little bit more obvious, okay? So at this point, this is the edge. I have to start at the edge that's folded over. We'll take that clip off, line it up so that you're going to sew it right at the beginning. Okay, so Braylon, you're going to go ahead and sew this. I want you to start, do your 3 stitches, and then do a back stitch, and then sew all the way down until you get to the end. And when you get to the end here, you're going to do another back stitch. So 1, 2, 3, and then go all the way off the edge, okay? Okay, so now she has sewn the whole length of the tube, and now we got to turn it right side out. So I like to use the tube turner. So what we're going to do is stick this purple part. So if you have one of these, they're awesome. Otherwise we can use a safety pin, which I can show you in a second. But we're going to go ahead, I'll let Braylon do it, she's pretty good at it. I'm going to put the purple tube inside of the tube of fabric and do it so that, let me show you this really quick, so we can see a little bit of purple and the rest of it is kind of all scrunched up on it. Now the trick is to use your belly as a third hand kind of and you're going to fold over the edge and just kind of tuck it in there, and what happens is it comes out and it has flipped it right side out, so now she can just continue to pull it. Awesome. So now the seam is all hidden on the inside, just like we want it to be. And you did a pretty good job lining up your stripes, may I add. Now, if you don't have a tube turner, I'm going to show you how to do it with a safety pin. So I'm going to undo this part. Alright, so now I have changed it so that the tube is inside out once again, okay? And this is our folded end right there, so the end that we had flipped over. What I'm going to do is take our safety pin, I'm going to just poke it through the top. So this is our folded end, and I just put it through the top there. I'm going to turn it so that the safety pin goes down into the tube of fabric. I'm going to scrunch it up. So the safety pin is right here, so it's right there. I'm trying to move the safety pin to come out the hole over here. I'm going to scrunch it up onto the safety pin. Now I'm holding onto the safety pin and I'm going to kind of just pull the fabric. Alright, so now the safety pin has come out that other side. I'm going to hold on to the safety pin and just kind of tug it out. Okay? So this is the other way. If you don't have the tube turner, safety pins work just as well. So either way, no matter how you do it, we want to turn it so the tube is right side out, right? So now that that is right side out, we can take the piece of elastic. Like I said, you can determine the length. When you get your kit, it's going to be 7.5 inches, but we cut it a little shorter. Braylon has thinner hair and she likes to have it a little tighter, so she likes it at 7 inches. So what I've done is just poke the safety pin through the top part of the elastic. I'm going to let you do this. I'm going to drop that safety pin down through the middle of the tube. And go ahead and feed it down there. And once you get it close to the end, go ahead and we're going to grab a clip. And now you do that, clip it. The reason that we're clipping this right now is so that it holds on to the end of the fabric so we don't accidentally pull the elastic all the way through. So right now she's trying to find the safety pin. So kind of show. So the safety pin is right there. So her goal now, just like when we turned the tube right side out, her goal is to move the safety pin to the other end of the hole over here. So she's going to start to slide it down that way.
And get scrunched up on the safety pin, so you just pull it back.
Yep. So the whole time she's kind of holding onto the safety pin and just kind of scrunching that fabric out of the way. Alright. Our safety pin has come through the other side. She's taking the safety pin off. Perfect. And then you can take that clip off as well, holding onto both ends.
You're going to overlap it. So you're going to
So overlap the two ends
of each other.
about 1/2 inch. And then we'll go ahead and put, I'll grab it real quick, a pin just to help secure it. Just put a pin through it so it holds that overlap in place. Now at this point we're going to go sew it right where that pin is at. We're just going to sew that short little 1/4 inch piece right there. And I like to use a zigzag piece. When you sew elastic, sometimes it skips stitches and it gets a little bit finicky. So the zigzag is going to give us a little bit more coverage and it works well with the elastic. So we'll go zigzag that shut. Okay, so as I mentioned, we want to do a zigzag stitch. So on this particular machine, our zigzag stitch is 04. So we're going to go ahead and change that to 04, which Braylon already did. And then at this point, if you have a magnet on your machine, go ahead and take that off because it will just get in the way. And we have that pinned area. We're going to slide that underneath the presser foot. So we're going to slide that under the presser foot and then put your presser foot down. Now at this point, this particular machine has a button that will allow me to move the needle up and down. So I do that about 3 times. If I didn't have that button, I could also use the hand wheel. But just to kind of get it started, once it gets started, we can take that pin out of the way. All right, so now Braylon's going to sew this. She's going to kind of hold the fabric out of the way while she sews. This might end up just turning into a big knot, depending on your machine. Go ahead and do a back stitch. But our goal, we're going to go forward and then do a back stitch and then go forward. If it does end up not moving, like if the stitch area gets so thick that the machine's not moving it, that's totally fine. Go ahead and just take it off. Our goal with this is just basically to knot these ends together. So you'll kind of see it just kind of got right there, so that we pulled it out. Okay, so we are going to go trim the strings. Okay, so now go ahead and trim your strings if you have not done so already. And what we're going to do is identify the raw edge and the folded edge. So this folded edge is the one that has a nice clean finish. This raw edge you can kind of see as a frayed end. So lining up our seam allowances, so our seam allowance where that line is at, we're going to take the one with the raw edge and tuck it inside the folded end. And you kind of have to take a second just to maneuver that. You want to tuck it in so that way you can sew a line there and catch both pieces, okay? You can see it's kind of bunched up over there, so we're just going to work with it until it's nice and smooth and straight. And this is striped fabric, which is going to make it easier for us to see if it's straight or not. But you can kind of see now that we have a folded edge right there, and the raw edge is tucked in, and it's pretty smooth, not a lot of wrinkles. So I think that's good to go. I'm going to take a pin and pin it through right there to hold that together. So our next step is going to be to sew a straight line right next to that folded edge, so that way it catches it all. So right where that pin is at, we're just going to sew a straight line down, okay? Okay, so now first thing that we need to remember to do, the machine right now is still in zigzag. I don't know if you can tell or not, but it's at 04. So we're going to move it back to 01, so we are in our straight stitch. And we're going to put it underneath here. The folded edge is going to be lined up to that notch. You just can kind of eyeball it there. And what we're going to do is she is going to sew it just straight down right along that folded edge. You're going to start and then do a back stitch. Sometimes it gets a little bulky, so you might need to grab, a tube turner or a purple thing and kind of push it out of the way. Do a back stitch. Perfect. All right, so now let's go get our bow done. All right, so she has it all sewn. So at this point, it's a pretty cute scrunchie just as is, but we're going to go ahead and sew the bow now. So at this point, like I said, you have 2 pieces of fabric. We're going to line them up, pretty sides kissing. This particular fabric doesn't have a noticeable right side or wrong side, so we're just going to stick them together. And you are going to clip or pin all around the edge, but we need to leave a hole. And I would suggest leaving a hole in the bottom center, and because you're going to have to flip it out. So I will go ahead and mark that for you real quick. Braylon, if you want to go ahead and grab some clips and clip around the outside of that. Perfect. All right. So she has clips all around the sides, and then we put 2 pins in the bottom, big enough that we can get our hole in there, or our hand in the hole. So that is just to notify that we don't want to sew right there. We'll go ahead and sew around the perimeter with the exception of that hole right there. Okay, so we already have the painter's tape lined up at the 1/2 inch mark on the right side, but I'm also going to put a piece of painter's tape on the bottom. That's going to mark a 1/2 inch from the bottom to the needle, okay? That's going to help her when she goes to do her pivots, because since we're going to be sewing around, we have to do pivots on each of the corners. So it helps a little bit. These are pivots on angles, so you kind of have to eyeball it a little bit too. Remember, if you go too far, you can always use a back stitch to get back, kind of back up a little bit. So if she's sewing and she accidentally sews to the end of the corner and she wanted to pivot, she can use a back stitch to move it back to where she wants when she goes to pivot. Okay, so what I like to do is line it up where the pin is at, so that way you can just go from pin to pin. So I'll put the magnet there just to kind of help make it a little bit clearer. Lower the presser foot. I'm going to take this first pin out because it's all lined up, and she's going to sew all the way around the end until she gets back to that second pin. Then start 1, 2, 3, do a back stitch 1, 2, 3, then keep going. Okay, so when that point gets lined up with the tape, she's going to pick it up. Go ahead and move that clip out of the way. Again, when that point gets lined up to that bottom tape, she's going to stop, keep the needle down, pick up the presser foot, and turn and keep it lined up to the magnet. I want you to stop sewing when you get to the pins or the clips and take them off. Keep going again, watching that corner, and the corner lines up. Then stop, pick up your presser foot, turn the fabric, take the clip off, keep going. Alright, so now Braylon has sewn all around the edges with that exception of the hole right here. Now before we go to turn it right sides out, we need to trim our corners, okay? This is probably going to be harder for you to see because we have navy thread on navy fabric. But basically, we are grading the corners. So you're just clipping away this extra fabric. You want to be careful not to cut where you have already sewn. And it's just going to kind of help reduce the bulk. Okay, so we can go ahead and trim around the edges. Where that hole is at right there, we definitely don't want to trim that. You want to leave that at its full seam allowance, but you can get rid of some of this extra fabric. The biggest thing, like I said, is just these corners. So that way when you go to flip it right side out, it's not going to be all bulky right there. So I usually say cut away about half of that seam allowance. Okay, and just for fun, we'll take that away too. Okay, so now we've kind of trimmed around the whole thing. No one's gonna see it, but that's gonna go with me. All right, so now at this point, we need to flip it right side out. I again like to use these tube turners, so you can kind of take it through that hole right there. Use the tube turner, flip it through one side, and then I'll let Braylon do the other side over there. Since there's two edges, we're going to do it in 2 passes because we just have our hole right in the middle. So she's kind of sticking it through the other end. We're using the flat end of the tube turning stick so that we don't accidentally rip it, and that's good. Go ahead and take it out. So now, doesn't that look pretty? Just kidding. What do we need to do now?
We need to go iron it.
We need to iron it. Before I iron it even, I'm going to now I'm going to use the pointy end. If you don't have one of these sticks, you could use a pencil also. Just be really careful, right? Really careful. Yeah. We've tend to rip holes sometimes if we get a little too aggressive. We're just going to you can kind of see, I'm just kind of gently taking that pointy stick and putting it into the corner. There we go. Go ahead and do this side. Now we can go iron it. So we'll go iron it real quick and then we will show you how to tie it up. Okay, so we went ahead and ironed it out, so now you can see it's just a nice little angled piece of fabric. Now we're going to take the scrunchie that you just sewed, and right where we have that stitch line is going to be a great place to tie this. So we're just going to slide this little bow right over that stitch line, and see how well I can do this. Move it out of the way. So I'm just kind of just trying it out. And I'm not even sewing. So, you know, we left that hole in the center. I did not even sew that shut because we are tying the knot right where that hole is at. So you can kind of mess with it, make it look pretty, even, whatever. I don't know, I think that's pretty cute. And there you go. You're ready to rock the bow scrunchie.
Twins.
Woo! Bye.